The rain had been falling since late afternoon, steady and relentless, turning the streets into rivers of light. Inside the cold warehouse by the harbour, the night shift settled in. Noah Reyes hung his jacket on the same hook he always used and set his lunchbox on the small metal desk that doubled as his office. On the wall above it was a picture his 9-year-old daughter had drawn, a small blue house under a sky of yellow stars. The crayon lines were uneven, but to Noah it was better than any photograph. He glanced at it now, the way some men glance at a compass, to remind himself where he was meant to point. He walked the aisles, his flashlight sweeping past pallets wrapped in plastic, each crate holding medicine bound for clinics across 3 counties. The freezers hummed, their steady rhythm almost comforting, almost. Noah stopped, crouched and pressed his fingers to the concrete. There it was again, that faint vibration from below. The backup generator was humming harder than it should. The grid was still on, but the storm outside was pressing, rattling the building like a warning knock. He frowned, making a quick note in his pocket pad. Storms never come alone, he thought. They always bring company. His phone buzzed. It was a video call from Maya, already tucked in with her notebook propped against her knees. Her smile lit up the dim apartment behind her. "Dad, look, I think I got the water cycle right this time." She flipped her page to show clouds, rain, and a river flowing into the ocean. Noah chuckled, the sound warm despite his tired eyes. "Perfect, see? You've got it. Now get some rest. Big quiz tomorrow." Her face grew serious. "Are you working all night again?" He nodded gently. "Yeah, but you don't worry about me. You just dream big. I'll see you in the morning." "Promise?" "Promise." She blew him a kiss before the screen went dark. For a moment, Noah kept staring at the reflection of his own tired face, then tucked the phone back in his pocket. The lights flickered overhead. Once, then again, longer this time. The hum of the freezers pitched higher, as if straining against something bigger than themselves. On the panel, a thin red line crept upward by a fraction. 1 fraction didn't mean disaster, but Noah had been around long enough to know what came next when storms pressed in. He reached behind his desk and pulled down a thick binder with a red spine. Its cover was worn, corners softened, pages crammed with scribbled numbers and taped notes. Most people thought it was junk paperwork. To Noah, it was the difference between order and chaos. He laid a palm on its cover and whispered under his breath, "Not tonight." Outside, thunder rolled across the harbour. The night was just beginning. A crack of thunder shook the rafters, and then with a hard snap, the lights went out. For a heartbeat, the warehouse was black, the storm pressing in like a living thing. Then dim orange glow strips flickered to life along the aisles, shadows stretching long across the concrete. Noah's chest tightened. He hurried to the control panel, boots echoing in the hollow dark. The screen confirmed his fear. City power was down. The warehouse was now riding entirely on the generator he'd felt trembling under his hand. He rubbed at his eyes, gritty from a long day already. He had been up since dawn, packing Maya's lunch, dropping her at school, catching a few short hours of sleep before his shift. His body ached for rest, but there was no room for that now. Behind him, Marco hovered, flashlight shaking in his grip. Is this bad?" Noah kept his voice even. "It's only bad if we panic. Emergency lights are up, freezers are still cold, we stay ahead of it." He walked Marco through the temperature logs, step by step, slow enough for the younger man to follow. The numbers were climbing in tiny steps, not dangerous yet, but Noah knew those tiny steps could turn into leaps if the generator failed. He pulled out his phone and tried calling the service line. Straight to voicemail. He hung up, jaw tight. No crew would come until morning. Morning was too far away. For a moment, he thought of Maya, asleep under a thin blanket in their small apartment across town. He pictured her lamp still glowing on the nightstand, the drawing of stars taped above her bed. He wished he could call back and hear her voice, but he couldn't add his fear to her night. She had a test tomorrow. She needed calm, not worry. Noah flipped open the red binder, its pages wrinkled and smudged from years of nights like this. "We're going to shed load," he told Marco. "Kill lights in the empty aisles. Shift cooling to the critical bays first." Marco hesitated. "Are we even allowed?" "Rules don't matter if the medicine goes bad," Noah cut in, steady but not harsh. "This isn't about paperwork. It's about people waiting on what's in these freezers." Together they moved through the warehouse, plunging sections into shadow, keeping only the essential areas glowing. The hum of the generator softened just enough to make Noah unclench his jaw. But as he returned to the panel, a new alarm lit up red. Basement pump failure, water rising. Noah pressed both hands to the edge of the console, feeling the weight of it all settle heavy on his shoulders. The storm wasn't interested in giving him one problem at a time. It wanted all of them at once. Water seeped under the basement door, each wave slapping against the concrete with a low, menacing sound. When Noah cracked it open, his flashlight caught the shine of water creeping higher step by step. The pump had failed, and the storm outside wasn't slowing. He climbed back up, heart beating hard in his chest. Marco was pacing near the loading bay, chewing his lip, flashlight jittering. It's rising too fast. If it hits the panels, what do we even do? We haul out the manual pump from storage and buy time, Noah said, flipping open the red binder. His finger traced a line of notes, calm but urgent. I'll show you how. Before Marco could respond, the warehouse door banged open. Wind and rain blew in, carrying the sharp smell of the storm. A figure stepped inside, shaking off a rain-soaked coat. It was Ava Caldwell, the company's vice president of operations. She shouldn't have been there. Executives didn't show up at night, let alone in weather like this. But earlier that evening, she'd left a dinner with investors when the first outage alert buzzed her phone. Something had pushed her past protocol and into the storm. Some part of her couldn't ignore the thought of an entire warehouse left to chance. Her sharp eyes swept the room. Why are half the lights out? And why wasn't I notified the grid went down? Marco froze, but Noah didn't flinch. We cut non-essential load to keep the generator alive. Grid's been down since just after 11. Service crews aren't coming till morning. Ava's jaw tightened. You had no authority to override energy protocols. If auditors see this, the fines will bury us. Noah straightened, damp hair sticking to his forehead. With respect, ma'am, if we don't cut load, the generator fails. If it fails, the medicine spoils. And a fine won't matter to the families waiting on those doses. The storm rattled the doors like a hand pounding to be let in. Ava's instinct screamed to cling to policy, but the numbers on the control panel told another story. The freezers were slipping, bit by bit. She looked at Noah, his face tired, his clothes damp, but his voice steady. Not reckless, steady. A buzz in his pocket pulled his eyes down. A text lit the screen. The wind is loud, but I'm okay. Good night, Dad. For just a second, his face softened. That same gentleness he used when talking to his daughter earlier. He tucked the phone away quickly, but Ava had already seen it. Something in her chest shifted. This wasn't a man chasing credit or bending rules for ego. This was a father holding a night together because someone small was depending on him. She drew a breath, her tone quieter this time. Fine, show me what you've done. Together they walked the aisles, Noah explaining breakers and cooling cycles, his voice calm, his instructions practical. Ava listened, arms still crossed, but less defensive now. Then the control panel buzzed again. Main delivery truck approaching flood zone, route blocked. Noah exhaled sharply. If they stay on Harbour Road, they'll be stuck until morning. Everything on board will spoil. Ava glanced at the dispatch log. That's the approved route. Rerouting will kill compliance numbers. Noah turned to her, voice low but firm. Numbers don't matter if the truck doesn't make it. Lives do. The warehouse fell silent. The storm hammered the roof. And in that silence, Ava had to choose. The clean safety of policy, or the messy truth staring back at her through Noah's steady eyes. The beeping on the panel kept pulsing, the warning about the truck still flashing red. Marco's face went pale. If that truck stalls out in the flood, the whole East Side clinic is out of luck. What if we just wait and hope they push through? Noah shook his head. Hope isn't a plan. He keyed the radio, voice steady as stone. Unit 7, turn around now. Head for North Bridge. It's higher ground. Ignore the GPS. Trust me. The driver's voice crackled back, hesitant but urgent. Copy. Turning north. Noah set the radio down, letting out a slow breath. It wasn't victory, just one less disaster waiting to happen. Before anyone could relax, a metallic crash echoed from below. The basement door burst open, water spilling in a thin sheet across the floor. Marco's eyes went wide. "It's flooding, what do we do now?" Noah was already moving, binder under his arm. He pulled open a storage cage and dragged out a heavy manual pump, metal rattling against the floor. "We set this up, it'll buy us time until power crews get here." Marco knelt beside him, fumbling with the parts. His hands shook so badly that a coupling slipped from his grip and clattered across the floor. I can't." Noah caught his wrist gently, not scolding, just steadying. "Look at me, you're fine. We'll do this together, one step at a time, just like solving a problem you don't know the answer to yet." His tone was calm, patient, the same one Ava had overheard when he answered that late-night text from his daughter. She watched from the stairwell, rainwater dripping from her coat, struck by the way he turned panic into trust without raising his voice. It was how a father teaches, not with power, but with patience. Marco swallowed hard, steadied his breathing and nodded. "Okay, tell me what to do." They worked side by side, threading hoses, checking valves, the pump coming to life with a sputtering roar. Water began to pull back, slow but certain, the basement no longer a ticking clock quite so close to drowning them. Upstairs, the control panel chimed. The truck's signal cleared the flood zone, rerouted safely over the bridge. Noah wiped a sleeve across his forehead, soaked through but steady. "That's 2 problems held back," he said quietly. Ava stepped closer, her arms no longer folded. She studied him differently now, not just a warehouse worker patching leaks in a storm, but a man whose calm came from carrying responsibility every day. For his crew, for his daughter, for people who would never know his name, but depended on his choices. Thunder cracked overhead, shaking the building. The storm wasn't done, not yet, and Ava realised neither was he. The storm pressed harder against the warehouse, each gust rattling the bay doors like fists pounding to be let in. The manual pump thumped steadily in the basement, fighting the flood, while the generator upstairs carried the weight of the whole building. At the control panel, the red numbers crept higher, each fraction a reminder of how close they were to failure. Then Ava's phone buzzed again. She stepped aside, rain dripping from her sleeves as she read the message. Her jaw tightened. Finance. Their instructions were blunt: cut power demand immediately or face penalties. She looked at Noah, bent over the panel, hair damp, face lined with exhaustion, but eyes steady. He had been holding this night together, one decision at a time, and yet the message in her hand threatened to undo it all. "They want us to cut deeper," she said, voice clipped. "Kill more systems. If we don't, the penalties will be brutal." Noah didn't even glance up. "If we cut more, we starve the freezers, and if that happens, every crate in this place spoils. Fines won't matter." Ava crossed her arms, caught in the same tug-of-war she'd lived her entire career. Rules versus reality. "You don't understand. This isn't just about penalties. They'll come after me, after you." Noah finally lifted his head. His voice was low, steady, almost gentle. "What do you think will matter more to those families, that we saved their medicine or that we saved the company some money?" The words hit harder than she expected. She thought back to the way he had calmed Marco, guiding him step by step like a patient teacher. She thought of the text she had glimpsed from his daughter, the way his whole face softened for a heartbeat. He wasn't reckless. He was careful because someone depended on him to be. Ava looked down at the glowing numbers on the screen, then at her phone, where the board's threats still pulsed. For years she had been the one who never wavered, the one who kept the walls between order and chaos. But now, staring at Noah, she realised walls meant nothing if the people inside them were left unprotected. She silenced her phone, slid it into her pocket and spoke clearly. "Hold the line, keep the freezers alive, I'll answer for it." Marco exhaled loudly, as if he had been holding his breath for minutes. Noah gave a small nod, already adjusting the breakers. "Then we fight for every degree we've got." Outside, thunder rolled so hard it shook the windows in their frames. The warehouse stood in its glow, battered but unbroken, the choice made. And for the first time in years, Ava Caldwell realised she wasn't protecting a policy anymore. She was protecting people. The basement pump groaned like an old engine ready to give out. Every few seconds it stuttered, spitting water in uneven gulps, and then caught again with a shudder. Noah crouched low, flashlight steady, watching the gauge needle slide closer to failure. His shoulders sagged under more than exhaustion. 20 hours awake, a body running on black coffee and stubbornness, and still the storm kept throwing punches. Marco hovered nearby, panic in his eyes. "She's dying on us. What happens if it quits?" Noah didn't sugarcoat it. "The water hits the panels, the generator shorts, and the whole warehouse goes dark." Marco swallowed, gripping the rail like it might keep him steady. "So what do we do?" Noah flipped through the red binder, pages soft from years of nights like this. His finger landed on a note scrawled in pencil. "Calhoun's Hardware. Keeps late hours. Call direct line." He tapped the page. "We need a replacement fuse and a backup pump. If we don't, all of this is gone before sunrise." Ava stepped closer, her coat still damp, hair clinging to her cheeks. "You can't be serious. It's the middle of the night in a hurricane. You're talking about a hardware store like it's the cavalry." Noah's voice stayed calm, even though his hands trembled from fatigue. "It's the only shot we've got. I know the owner. He'll open for us." Ava's phone buzzed again. Another message from finance demanding cuts, warning of liability. She stared at it for a long second, then silenced it without replying. Her eyes lifted to Noah, who was already dialing the number with wet fingers, shoulders squared like a man who didn't have the luxury of doubt. On the third ring, a gravelly voice answered. "You know what time it is?" "It's Noah Reyes from Harborlink," he said, pushing the words through his exhaustion. "We've got medicine on the line and a pump about to fail. I need a fuse and a backup unit tonight." There was silence, then a sigh. "Storm's got half the block underwater, but I'll unlock the side door. Be quick." Noah ended the call, pulling on his raincoat. He turned to Marco. "Keep this pump alive as long as you can. Don't stop, even if it feels hopeless." Marco's voice cracked. "You're going out there? Alone?" Before Noah could answer, Ava spoke. "Not alone." He looked at her, surprised. She met his gaze without flinching. "I've seen what you do when people are falling apart. You steady them, you steady me. I'm not letting you walk into that storm by yourself." Noah wanted to argue. She wasn't built for wading through floodwater in the middle of the night. But he saw the resolve in her eyes, the same resolve he carried every time Maya looked to him for strength. He gave a single nod. "All right, we move fast." Together they pushed open the bay doors. The storm greeted them with a wall of rain, wind tearing at their coats, water rising cold around their boots. Streetlights flickered, bending under the gusts, the city around them nearly unrecognisable. Side by side they stepped into the dark. Behind them, the basement pump gave a sickening cough, as if reminding them how little time they had left. The night swallowed them the moment they stepped out. Wind ripped down the street, driving rain sideways, pushing against their chests as they waded through knee-deep water. Each streetlight flickered and swayed, bending like it might snap. The storm had turned the familiar city into something unrecognisable, a maze of rushing water and broken shadows. Noah's flashlight cut a narrow path ahead, though his hands were heavy with exhaustion. His legs burned with every step, but he pushed on, jaw set. This wasn't about comfort. It was about keeping the warehouse alive until dawn, about making sure the world his daughter woke up to still had what it needed. Ava stayed close at his side, one hand on the wall when the wind shoved too hard. She'd walked into plenty of boardrooms filled with sharp questions, but nothing had ever pressed on her like this, the sheer weight of water, darkness, and consequence. Yet somehow Noah moved with a steadiness that didn't come from training manuals. It came from something else. Halfway down the block, Noah's phone buzzed. He almost ignored it, but when he saw the name, Maya, he stopped in the rain, shielding the screen with his hand. He answered, breath rough from the fight against the storm. "Dad?" Her voice was small, crackling through the speaker. "The lights went out at the shelter for a minute. I was scared. Are you okay?" Noah closed his eyes, steadying his breathing before he spoke. "I'm okay, kiddo, just a little wet." He forced a smile into his voice. "You're safe there, right?" "Yeah," she whispered. "They gave us blankets, but the wind is so loud." He pictured her curled under a thin blanket, clutching her science notebook. He thought of the drawing taped above her bed, the stars she wanted to memorize, and he knew what he had to give her now, calm. "Listen," he said softly. "Remember the water cycle you showed me? Rain falls, rivers rise, but then the sun always comes back. That's what this storm is. just part of the cycle. You hold on tight, and I'll be there when the sun comes back." There was a pause, then a whisper. "Promise?" "I promise." He slipped the phone back in his pocket, pressing it against his chest as if to keep her heartbeat close. Ava had heard every word. She didn't say anything, but in the glow of the flashlight her expression changed. She had seen executives bark orders all her life. She had never seen one man hold an entire night steady with nothing but patience and love. By the time they reached Calhoun's Hardware, the windows were dark, the block half underwater. For a moment Noah feared they were too late. Then, at the side door, a thin beam of light flashed twice. An old man in a raincoat waved them in. "You better make this quick," he grumbled, leading them down aisles stacked with tools. "Storm's eating the whole street." Noah grabbed the fuse and the pump, thanking him with a grip of the hand more than words. Then he and Ava plunged back into the storm, carrying hope in their arms while the city roared around them. When they pushed back into the warehouse, Marco was at the top of the stairwell shouting over the roar. "The pump's choking! I don't know how much longer she'll hold." Noah set the equipment down, his body aching, his mind sharp. "Then we don't waste a second. Let's keep this place alive." The clock was running down, and the storm was nowhere near finished. The warehouse was louder than the storm now. The failing pump screeched in the basement, water slapping concrete in angry bursts. Marco knelt in the stairwell, flashlight bouncing in his shaking hands. Noah dropped to the floor beside the new pump, his whole body heavy with fatigue. His fingers trembled as he lined up the fuse. He had been running on fumes since before sundown, but his movements stayed precise, steady in spite of the ache. Years of being a father had trained him for nights like this, when you were dead tired but a small voice needed you to stay awake, stay calm, stay present. "Stay. Hold that light steady," he told Marco, his voice gentle even now. "Don't think about the water, just breathe." Marco swallowed, nodding. The beam steadied. Ava crouched nearby, rainwater dripping from her hair, watching every move. Hours ago she would have argued, would have called for permission, would have demanded reports. Now, soaked to the bone, she saw the truth. This wasn't a man improvising. This was a man carrying years of quiet preparation, page by page in a red binder nobody else respected. Noah twisted the last connection and gave a tired nod. "Fire it." Marco flipped the switch. For a heartbeat there was nothing but silence and the pounding rain outside. Then the pump roared to life, pulling water away in powerful gulps. The flood in the basement began to fall, inch by inch. Ava let out a breath she hadn't realised she was holding. "You did it!" But Noah didn't celebrate. He pushed himself to his feet, rubbing his eyes with the back of his sleeve. "We bought time, that's all." His voice was raw, the edges worn thin. They hurried back upstairs. On the panel, the freezer temperatures hovered just below the danger line. One more surge, and everything inside would spoil. Ava's phone buzzed again. She almost ignored it, but the words on the screen flashed like a different kind of alarm. Rumours spreading, media asking questions, shareholders demanding answers. Her throat tightened. Corporate didn't see the sweat on Noah's brow, or the panic Marco had just barely held back. They didn't hear the storm clawing at the building. They only saw liability. She locked the phone and shoved it back into her pocket. For the first time in her career, she chose not to answer. Noah leaned heavily on the console, his shoulders slumped, his voice low. "We'll rotate cooling. One bay on, one bay off. Messy, but it'll keep them alive until morning." Marco frowned. "And that's not in the manual." Noah gave a tired smile, the kind that came from years of making do. "That's why it works." They moved through the aisles together, shutting down, powering up, rotating cycles. It wasn't pretty, but the red numbers stopped climbing. The freezers held. Then the generator gave a deep cough, a vibration running through the concrete floor like a warning from the earth itself. Noah steadied himself against the panel, every muscle aching. "She's not done testing us yet," and Ava realised neither was the world outside. But for the first time, she wasn't thinking about her career or her reputation. She was thinking about the man in front of her, dead on his feet, but still refusing to let go. By dawn, the warehouse had steadied. The pump hummed like a tired drum, the freezers held their fragile line, and the storm began to roll east. Noah leaned against the console, head heavy, eyelids gritty with exhaustion. He had fought through the night on little more than coffee and stubborn resolve. Marco sat slumped on a crate, drained but alive with relief. "We actually made it," he muttered. Ava stood near the window, her coat still damp, her hair pulled back with a trembling hand. Grey light spilled across the flooded streets. She should have felt relief. Instead, her phone buzzed again, the name of the board chair flashing across the screen. There would be no silence this time. She answered. The voice came sharp and fast. "Caldwell, what is going on down there? We're hearing about outages, trucks rerouted, power use spiking off the charts. Shareholders want answers and they want them now." Her eyes flicked to Noah. He was hunched over the red binder, scribbling notes with the same patience he'd shown all night. Not for credit, not for appearance, just so the next storm wouldn't catch them off guard. She steadied her voice. "What happened," she said slowly, "is that a team kept medicine safe through a night that should have wiped us out. And they did it because one man trusted what he could see with his own eyes instead of waiting for permission." The voice on the line snapped back. "You let a warehouse driver make strategic calls. Do you know how that sounds on paper?" Noah heard it, but he didn't bristle. He lifted his head, voice low but plain. "I didn't make strategic calls. I told a driver to turn around when I knew the road was flooding. I kept a pump running so children wouldn't miss their shots this week. That's not strategy, that's common sense." The room went quiet, the storm outside muffled now by the heavy silence of people listening. At the far end of the line, someone cleared their throat. It was another shareholder, a paediatric doctor who rarely spoke at these calls. Her voice was soft but firm. "My clinic received part of that shipment this morning. Without it, I'd be turning families away. Whatever he did, it saved us." The silence broke into murmurs, some skeptical, some thoughtful. Ava watched Noah in that moment. His clothes still damp, his face lined with fatigue, his hands ink-stained from the binder. He didn't look like power. He looked like truth. The chair's voice came back, cooler now. "You'll explain this at the shareholder meeting. And Caldwell, if this blows back, it's your name on the line." Ava didn't hesitate. "Then it's my name, but he'll be standing beside me." She ended the call and let the phone drop into her coat pocket. For the first time in years, she felt lighter. Not because the fight was over, but because she knew where she stood. Noah looked at her, a weary half-smile tugging at his mouth. "You realise I'm no boardroom speaker." "You don't need to be," Ava said softly. "You just need to be what you've been all night, honest." Behind them, the warehouse lights flickered back to life as the city grid returned. The storm had passed, but another was waiting in glass towers and polished rooms. This time, though, she wasn't planning to face it alone. The boardroom smelled of polish and power. Mahogany table, glass walls, espresso machine humming down the hall. For Noah, it might as well have been another planet. His work boots squeaked faintly on the marble floor as he sat stiffly at the end of the table, binder balanced on his knees. He kept his hands folded, shoulders heavy with fatigue. He had fought a storm all night. Now he felt like he was fighting silence. Ava stood at the head, her blazer crisp, but her voice carrying the rough edge of sleepless hours. "You've all read the reports. Yes, our energy numbers spiked. Yes, routes were changed. But what those reports don't show is this. Our medicine stayed cold. Families weren't turned away. And it happened because one man refused to look away when the rules didn't match reality." A shareholder leaned forward, brows drawn tight. "Are you saying you let an hourly employee override dispatch?" Noah shifted, clearing his throat. His voice came low, plain, almost weary. "I didn't override anything. I saw a road flooding, so I told a driver to turn back. I heard a pump choking, so I found another one. I wasn't chasing numbers. I was just keeping kids from missing their shots." His words landed heavy because they weren't polished. They were tired. True. The room went still until a woman at the far end, one of the smaller shareholders, a paediatric doctor, spoke. "My clinic received that shipment. Without it, we'd have cancelled appointments for 24 families this week. He may not call it strategy, but I will." Murmurs rippled down the table, but no one challenged her. The chair leaned back, eyes narrowing. "You realise this sets a precedent. Bringing warehouse staff into leadership discussions, this isn't how things are done." Ava didn't blink. Then maybe it's time things are done differently. She placed a small card on the table, a proposal in bold letters, the open minute. Every crisis meeting begins with 60 seconds from the people closest to the floor, no interruptions, no filters, just the truth. Some frowned, some nodded, but the motion was passed, not because of polished slides, but because results were undeniable. Afterward, outside in the courtyard, the air was cool and damp, the sky finally clearing. Maya came running across the lot, backpack bouncing, her face bright with relief. "Dad," she called, throwing her arms around him. "They said you saved the medicine. Is it true?" Noah hugged her tight, his voice catching with fatigue. "I just did my part, that's all." Maya pulled a folded paper from her backpack, a fresh drawing in crayon. She handed it to him shyly. This time, it wasn't a house under stars. It was a man standing in front of a building, holding a red book in one hand, with the words, "Dad keeps the city safe." Ava stood a few steps back, watching them. For years she had measured success in numbers and compliance reports. Now, looking at the drawing in Maya's hands, she realised success might be simpler than she had believed. Noah looked from the picture to his daughter's face, then to Ava. For once, he didn't feel out of place in polished rooms or glass towers. Belonging wasn't about where you sat. It was about who trusted you enough to sit beside you. The sun broke through the clouds, spilling gold across the wet pavement. And for the first time in a long while, the world felt steady. Lesson: true leadership isn't about titles or policies. It's about showing up when it matters, standing steady in the storm, and choosing people over numbers. Integrity, patience, and trust can turn ordinary moments into the kind that change everything. Thank you for staying with this story until the very end. I'm truly grateful for your time. If this touched you, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you again soon, right here on Rain Inside.